Let me do that real quick. Sheila, can you grab Murray? She's meowing at the door. There we go. Oh, Noreen, I need to bail.
Oh, they can hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Hey everybody, welcome to Do You Believe on Paranormal Zone TV. I want to thank you all so much for joining us tonight. And for those who may be new to the show, if you would please subscribe, I'd appreciate it. And don't forget to give the show a like. We have a great guest tonight. I'm so excited. Let's see. Hold on. Here's Terry. This is Terry Lovelace. This is Terry Lovelace is a retired lawyer, a former assistant attorney general, and a 10-year USAF veteran from 1973 to 1979. After the military service, Terry completed a bachelor's degree in psychology and a law degree from Western Michigan. It would have been a career suicide to have come forward with a story of alien abduction while a civil servant. In 2012, an event rekindled nightmares that had plagued him for 40 years. In 2018, Terry wrote the book Incident at Devil's Den, a true story of alien abduction. So with that, let me bring, Terry on. Hey, Terry, thanks for joining us on the show.
Thank you, Noreen. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Oh, I'm so happy to have you and for you to tell your awesome... I checked all over the internet. I've read up on you, and your story is really fabulous. Oh, here, let me get you on here on Skype. Listen, before we start the show, though, this happened at Devil's Den State Park, okay? So I want to show the viewers the location before we start, okay? So here, this is the aerial view of where this happened. And this is in Devil's Den State Park. It's in the Lee Creek Valley of Boston Mountains, which are part of the Ozarks. And let me get another image. Okay, and this valley is littered with numerous sandstone caves, bluffs, ravines, rock shelters, and crevices that provided an excellent hiding place for outlaws on the Butterfield stage line from 1858 until the beginning of the American Civil War in 1861, and it's no wonder it's haunted. And annually, they have an annual Ozark Mountain UFO conference every year. Also, I wanted to tell you, hold on for a second, let me bring... Okay. Also, I found out that, now we all know that there's mysterious disappearances in national parks, okay? Well, the Devil's Den State Park is near the Arkansas Ozark National Park, and many have gone missing there. So with that, welcome, Terry.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Hey, Terry, yeah. I wanted to ask you, how many times did you camp at that location?
Oh, just once.
Just once?
Just once, yes.
Why do you think they picked you to abduct?
You know, I don't know. I was with my friend, my co-worker. I refer to him as Toby. Toby and I worked at Whiteman Air Force Base. We were both medics and EMTs. We were first responders. We worked the night shift in an emergency room driving an ambulance. And one night, my friend Toby came to me and said, hey, I got an idea, man. Let's go camping. And I said, Toby, are you nuts, man? Because, I said, we're city kids. I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri. You grew up in Flint, Michigan. Neither one of us know anything about camping. And he knew I had a new camera that I wanted to try out. And Whiteman Air Force Base was a nuclear base, as it still is. It's the home of the B-2 bombers now, but back when I was there, from 73 to 79, it was a SAC base, and they had B-52s and a squadron of Minuteman II ICBMs. So there's not a lot you can photograph on a nuclear base. So I wanted to try out my camera, and he wanted to try to do some star watching. He was an amateur astronomer. And he said, man, this is a perfect place to go. And, we were in the middle of nowhere to begin with. This is, back then especially, was a very remote place, Whiteman Air Force Base. And there were, a dozen state parks around us that were, within an hour's drive. But he convinced me that we should go to Devil's Den. I don't know where he got this, but it was an obsession with him to go there. And we did. It was a 6.5-hour drive. And it's a beautiful place.
Oh, yeah, it absolutely is. And they have caves. And I can understand with all that, with the Civil War and everything, did you feel anything when you were there camping?
No, not until the event itself happened. But I was going to add this. When I sat down to write my book in 2017, I did some research. And I wanted to try to find out how many people had gone missing, how many people had died in the area. And the Parks Department was of no help to me whatsoever. They said, we don't keep statistics on that. And I said, I find that hard to believe. You don't have a list of people that have gone missing. Nope, none of the kind, nothing of the kind. I ran into the same problem David Paulides did when he researched for his books. The Parks Department claimed, total ignorance. So I did some research. I found, I just got to share this real quick because it's just so bizarre. In 1946, there was a family named Van Alst, Vanalst, 2 words, from Pittsburgh. I found this story in the 1946 edition of the Pittsburgh Press. And the family, there was a mother, father, 2 younger boys, and a daughter named Catherine Van Alst, who was 8. And they were on their way from Pittsburgh to El Paso, Texas, and had campsites planned along the way, and they planned to stay at Devil's Den State Park. So they stayed at the campground. And it must have been really rustic then, because back in 77, it was really remote. But they had a campground set up and a ranger station, and they spent the first night. The next morning, the mother is sitting breakfast on a picnic table, and according to the story, Catherine and her 2 brothers are running around and around the camper, like kids do. Mm-hmm. And then the 2 boys pop out, and there's no Catherine. And the mother looks over and I'm sure is annoyed and says, "Boys, where's your sister?" Mm-hmm. And he said, "Well, I don't know, but she was right here." Well, she wasn't right there. And the mother says, "Well, go find her. Go check the restrooms, go find her and bring her back. We're going to eat." So the boys look and they can't find her. Oh. So they get the dad up. Dad starts looking. The other campers get involved. This was early morning, and by noon, park rangers got involved. And on the east side, there's a highway that divides it. On the west side, it's Devil's Den State Park, and on the east side, it's the Ozark National Forest. So there were volunteers from the Ozark National Forest looking for Catherine. She couldn't have gone far, they thought, because she had on flip-flops and a bathing suit. That was it. Mm. So long and short, they searched 2,500 acres. They had thousands of volunteers. They had the Volunteer Civil Air Patrol out of Little Rock, Arkansas, flying light planes over the area looking for her. They had dogs that got a scent and sat down, whatever that means. And the search had gone on for 7 days. At the end of that 7th day, it was to shift from a rescue to a recovery. And it would be scaled back. So there was a volunteer, a college kid from Arkansas State, who was there to help look for her. And he was up on a high bluff, elevation of about 700 feet from their campsite. And he's at the top of this thing, And it's a site that had been searched at least twice before. And he's calling out Catherine, and a little girl pops out from under this limestone outcropping and says, "Here I am." And he's like, "Wow, your mother is looking for you." And he went and scooped her up and carried her back to the campsite, and everybody was ecstatic, of course. And then they realized that she'd been gone for 7 days, 6 nights. Her hair was clean, she was well hydrated, and there was no potable water up there anywhere. She hadn't lost an ounce of weight, and other than a few bug bites, she had no injuries whatsoever, and had no memory of what happened to her. All she knew is that she woke up that morning by that rock and assumed that her family would be by for her soon. So she was going to sit there until they came.
I read that. I found that story, but I didn't want to talk about it. I know. Isn't that amazing? I wonder, and of course, since she was found, there's no more follow-up on her, where, like what happened to you 40 years later, you had found out that you were abducted. And I wonder if the same thing might have happened to her, but nobody, I'm sure there's no follow-up and nobody kept in touch with her.
No, I certainly tried to find her, and I found a bunch of Van Alsts, but I found no one that was familiar with a Catherine Van Alst. And of course, she's probably married. I don't know what her married name is. I don't know if she stayed in Pittsburgh. I wish I could have connected with at least one relative and got some information. God, that's an opportunity lost not to have been able to talk to her.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, and I am assuming, since they have every year a UFO conference, that there must. Well, actually, I did read that way back, starting in the 1800s, there had been sightings of UFOs, but I could not find any other abductions except yours.
Yes, well, there are a slew of them, and the UFO spottings were in the 1896 was the peak year, I believe. And they were described as, if we've read the same story, kind of blimp-like with fins. Strange description. But they were seen all throughout the area down there in the 1890s. As far as abduction goes, when I was writing this thing in 2017, because I would check their newspaper down there every day, the Herald or whatever it is, and I found a woman who had committed suicide. That was in early summer of 2017. And then in August of 2017, there was a young man, 32 years of age, from Bartlesville, Oklahoma, who was down to walk the Butterfield Trail with a friend of his. Now, he had asthma, but otherwise was healthy. And they've walked a couple miles along the Butterfield Trail. And he says, "Dad, I need my inhaler. I left it back in the truck." And his friend said, "No sweat. I'll run back and get it for you." So the friend goes back to the truck, retrieves the inhaler, and catches up where he left Rodney. He gets there, and there's no Rodney Letterman. All there is his cell phone on the ground. And I don't know about you, but my cell phone never leaves my pocket or my hand. And he looked for him, called his name, and realized, I don't know where he went, and gets a hold of the ranger's office, and they start a search immediately. And they had a big search. When I say big, I mean they had helicopters with FLIR, the forward-looking infrared radar, to get a heat signature on the guy. Thousands of volunteers. They were bound and determined to find him. And at the time I published my book, March 10th, 2018, they had not found him. However, in February of 2019, there were 2 hikers along the Butterfield Trail. And one of them glanced over, and in plain view, in plain sight, there was this log, and on top of it was a piece of bone. And he went over to inspect it because it looked odd, and they picked it up, and it was the top of Rodney Letterman's skull, verified by the medical examiner from Bartlesville, Oklahoma.
Oh my gosh!
And that's all they ever found of Mr. Letterman.
Oh wow! After this had happened to you in this location, did you ever go back?
No.
Okay.
I've never been back.
All right. I have another question. I found this where it has two pictures of you, before and after. Can you explain that?
I can't see the screen.
It's a picture of you in a Hawaiian shirt where you're full-faced, heavy, and then
Yes.
after, where you look like you really aged.
Yeah, I did age. It was a tough year. When I made the decision to write this book, well, I should explain. I had a heart attack in 2005, and in 2011 I had a stent put in my heart. So I've got a cardiac history, and I'd been a runner all my life. So I went from burning a lot of calories to burning virtually none, but eating the same. And I did. I gained a lot of weight. And as I started writing the book, I started to drop weight. And it was the craziest thing because I was losing weight despite the fact that I was increasing my calorie intake. Finally, my doctor had put me on, Ensure, one of those drinks that you use to supplement your nutrition.
Uh-huh.
And my weight dropped from, in that picture, I'm weighing about 240. I'm 6 foot tall. My weight on the back page where I'm wearing my Air Force shirt, I weighed 139 pounds in that photo.
Oh, yeah. I figured. So, did this change come? All right. So after you were abducted, okay. Let me see. Okay. Well, I've got to find that picture again. I just got rid of it. Oh, God. Hold on. Before and after. Okay. So in this picture here, with the you're full-faced and heavy. It doesn't even look like you. The two pictures don't even look alike. So that's what you look like before you were taken. And then how?
Well, no. That before I was taken, I was trim and fit all my life until 2005 when I had my heart attack and quit running. So those were just pictures to show that after I had retired from the state of Vermont, that's what I looked like. That's how much I weighed, in 2013.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe there was something happened that you had like really drastically aged after you had been taken.
No, not at all.
Oh, okay.
I had some things happen to me, physical things after I was taken, but I certainly didn't age. But I did age considerably. The writing the book was good mentally. It was a good catharsis. It was good to get it down on paper, and it was good to feel like I could finally tell people the story and not have to worry about, being ostracized by my peers in the legal community. I was free to say what I want.
All right. So why don't we start now with the story, starting from 1977 when it happened?
Sure. The story starts where I kind of gave it away. Rodney says to me one night, "Let's go camping," and I wanted to go to Knob Noster State Park. Someone had given him a brochure about Knob Noster State Park, and he was obsessed with the idea. And at first, like I said, I was just really against it. But the more I thought about it, I thought, we can make this both a road trip and a camping trip, and it might be fun. So we had a 4-day weekend coming up in June. This was probably April when we first discussed it. And, at first I was kind of lukewarm in the thing, but I got to tell you, I started to obsess over it myself. And we really did. I mean, that's all we talked about. It's all we thought about was planning every detail of this camping trip. Here we are, two guys who've never been camping, and we're trying to figure out how to do this. And like my friend said, hey, this isn't rocket science. We go to Kmart, we buy a cheap tent, some blow up air mattresses. Our wives will pack a cooler for us. We were both married at the time. I still am. I was 22. Toby was 23. So, our wives were kind of against it at first, but then they're like, you guys work hard. You don't golf. You don't do anything like that. You guys want to take a road trip and camp? Go ahead and do it. So we had our wives' blessings, and we headed to Devil's Den State Park. about a 6.5 hour ride through the middle of nowhere. Back then, it's built up now, but back in 1977, it was really nothing but farmland and, low mountains and soybean fields and a bunch of nothing, really. And on the way down, my friend Toby says, "Hey, I decided let's not stay in the campground." And I'm like, "Well, why not? I mean, doesn't that give us, running water, hot showers, electricity, all that stuff?" It's like, "Yeah, but think about it. We're going to have people to the right of us, people to the left of us, probably people behind us." He said, "We might as well camp in Walmart's parking lot." And he made a point. And he says, "Hey, let's be outdoorsmen. We want to camp. Let's go find our own space." And he was obsessed with the idea of finding a place up high where he could get a clear view of the night sky without any light pollution. So off in the distance, we dodged the ranger station, took a paved road till it turned to gravel, till it turned to dirt, and we could see this elevated plateau in the distance. And there were just some turns we had to make to get there. And we drove up, it's a pretty steep incline, and we crested the top of this hill. And I call it a meadow in my book. It was just gorgeous. It was just beautiful. There were no trees on it. It was just, grass about knee high, late blooming wildflowers. It was just gorgeous. And we were high up, so we had a view of the top of the forest all around us. We walked the perimeter of the tree line, and to us it seemed horseshoe shaped. That's the way I described it in my book. I actually didn't bother trying to look it up on Google Earth because I assumed after 40 years the thing would be covered with mature trees. But it's not. It is exactly the way we left it. So somebody goes up and cuts that. And if you go on Google Earth, you'll find out that plateau is owned by, it's federal land. It's owned by the Bureau of Land Management. And they send somebody up there with a tractor to cut the grass and make sure that it's not covered with trees.
Does it look like maybe a landing for a plane?
It's triangular. That's what I see when I look at it. I see a triangle. And that the thing that we saw, well, I'll get into that, but yeah, it looks like a triangle to me. Your audience can look at it and decide for themselves.
It absolutely does. Now that's really weird. Okay, now that's weird. Is there a military base close to this location?
No, not real close. Not that I know of. No.
Somebody is clearing that place for a reason, and you're absolutely right. I'm showing to them it is a triangle shape. And that's why that area. The rest of the forest isn't like that, just that area. It's pretty large, too.
It is large. And
well, Terry, don't you think that's strange?
I think it's very strange. But I think after you hear the rest of my story, it makes sense.
Okay.
I think it's probably still in use today for a landing field or something. It's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah.
We camped. I wanted to camp right in the middle. And my friend really objected to that. And he said, no, we got to camp along the tree line. And we argued about it. And usually when we argued, he would cave. But Toby didn't on this. He was insistent that we camp on the tree line. Had we camped where I wanted to, this thing would have been directly over our heads. But as it was, we were kind of offset near the tree line. And the thing wasn't right on top of us. I mean, it was close to us, but it wasn't right on top of us. So what happened was, we did all the fun stuff you do on a camping trip. We went for a hike. We, barbecued hot dogs and, had a really enjoyable day. And we're kicked back on our air mattresses. We have a campfire between us and our tent's set up in back. And we're sitting there, we're just talking, and I remember saying to my friend, hey, I can understand why people like this. This is actually pretty pleasant. And of course he has to gloat and say, yeah, I told you. And, but it was very nice. I mean, I'd never experienced that before. And this sounds really cliche, I know, but I got to tell you that and swear to you that it's absolutely true. We were having our conversation, and just a few minutes before, we were having trouble hearing one another because of the crickets and the tree frogs. And I noticed that it was dead silent. All of a sudden, it was just dead quiet out there. And it wasn't only quiet, Noreen, it was still. The breeze that we had enjoyed earlier had gone.
Oh, it's like those monster movies. When a monster's coming, everything is complete silence still.
I got to tell you, that really unnerved me. My friend was oblivious. He says, it's no big deal. We've been talking, laughing, and cutting up. They'll be back. We just made too much noise.
Terry, when you were, okay, go ahead. You're going to talk about, but you didn't know. So you didn't find out until 40 years later that you had been abducted. So go ahead with your story, because I have some questions for you.
Sure. Actually, I did know. We did know that we'd been abducted.
Oh, you did?
We did. We never told anyone. I kept a written diary. My wife knows. She knew. My kids, they're 40 and 34 now. My kids knew that, Dad used to have screaming nightmares once or twice a year, but they didn't know anything about this. But I kept a diary. I kept some drawings, and I never, ever, I want to be clear, I never, ever had a clear linear memory of everything that happened, because we were gone. We were in this thing for, I calculate, probably 4.5 hours. And I have just little snippets of details from being inside this thing and what they did to us. And I can tell your audience about those, because it's pretty interesting.
Okay, all right. Okay. So, you were taken. Okay, so you were taken. Were you, okay, so tell me again. I lost track. Where were you taken? Were you on the water? Were you on a lake? Or were you at your campsite?
We were at the campsite.
At the campsite.
And this was right after I made the observation that things had gone completely still. And my friend, Toby, had his head turned to the left, and he's seated to my left. And I'm about to ask him, hey, man, what are you looking at? And he said, hey, Terry, were those lights there before? And I'm like, what lights? What are you talking about? I couldn't see them because his torso was in the way, so I had to stand up and take a step back, and then I could see what he was looking at. On the horizon, there were three little stars in a tight triangle configuration, each one being about as bright as the North Star. So it looked weird. It did not look like it belonged there. I mean, it was too far up off the horizon to have been lights from a shopping center or a train or something. And it was stationary. And Toby said, well, it must be an airplane. I mean, we were familiar with aircraft. We didn't know any aircraft that had that kind of light configuration. And, I said, well, maybe it's headed in our direction. And it's just the illusion that it's standing still because, it's headed straight for us. So we just kind of watched for a minute or two, and that wasn't the case. It wasn't moving. It was absolutely static.
So these were lights. It wasn't a spaceship. There were lights?
This began as just three lights on the horizon. The horizon being, I guess, 20-some miles away, but they were far in the horizon.
Okay, so when you were seeing these lights, how did you feel?
It's really interested, really curious, and kind of excited, and maybe a little bit of fear. But my mood would change, and that's kind of hard to believe. But it was a unique experience. I'll explain. While we're watching these things, they moved, and the first thing they did was they rotated like they were on an axis. And they aligned themselves where the bottom of the triangle was parallel with the horizon, and then the apex of the triangle was pointed straight up. And, I don't think we said a word to one another. We're just watching this thing. and then it starts to move up into the sky, and it moves very slowly at first, and then it picks up some speed, and it looked like it was climbing to an altitude. And as it climbed, it got bigger. And it was a beautiful night that night. There were just, I mean it when I say there were a trillion stars out, because there were. There was so much starlight that the sky had a blueness to it. Mm. And we could see that in between these stars, it was jet black. And as we watched it get larger, it began to tumble, and it would go like the apex of the thing would turn around, and it would go. We'd see 3 lights, then a triangle, then 2 lights for a minute, and then it'd come back from underneath, and it was just, doing somersaults. And I don't know where it came from, but I had the distinct feeling that, this thing's moving with purpose. It's not just out of control. It knows where it's going and what it's doing. I don't know where that came from.
Now there was a picture of a, oh gosh, where was it? There was a picture of a triangular spaceship. No. Okay, so I have a drawing of what you saw. I'm showing it to them right now.
Yeah, that's taken from my notebook where I had drawn it in pencil. And in 2017, my wife flew back up to Michigan to our storage locker, and she knew where they were. She retrieved those 2 notebooks that I kept. And that was a drawing that I had made in December of 1977, some months after the fact.
And that's what it looked like?
That's exactly what it looked like. The top was lit up, and the top looked like an observation deck. I'm not the greatest artist, and I try to convey that the glass kind of leaned outward, and we could see movement in back of this thing. We couldn't make out what they were, or even that they were humanoid. We could just see motion and shadows. And there were the checkerboard thing on the side. This thing was lit up like an office building. At night, you know how you'll see some offices lit and the rest are just black? That's kind of what this was like.
But this was in the woods, so nobody else would have seen it except you.
I don't understand that to this day. That is just the biggest mystery to me. This thing was so big. Granted, we were out in the boonies, but it was so big it should have been seen in 5 counties. And I just do not for the life of me understand how it was not.
Wow.
But after it did this tumbling thing, I had this weird sensation, and where I was interested in this thing before, not really fearful, suddenly I felt really calm and almost sedated, and kind of a pleasant feeling. And my mood was almost, I don't want to say apathy, but maybe disinterest, inappropriately so. I felt more like an observer than a participant in this. I don't really know how to explain and express my state of mind, but it was different. It was inappropriate to the moment.
Okay, so and so you saw this, and at what point were you taken?
Well, here's what happened. We weren't taken right away. It came through. We could see because we were on high ground, we could see the shadow of the thing moving across the treetops. And it finally came to a stop right in the center of that triangle at a height of about 3,000 feet. And this thing was absolutely enormous. It was like a super Walmart. And it was lit up like crazy. And again, like I say, I don't know how people couldn't have seen this. It's crazy.
Well, when you okay, go ahead. Okay, did you report this?
No, we did not. We did not. We were both active duty Air Force. Had we told our friends back in the hospital squadron, yeah, we saw a UFO the size of a triangle, they'd put us in a psych ward. in the Air Force in 1977, that was something you just did not talk about. I mean, it just wasn't. It wasn't a topic for conversation. And so anyway, it stopped. I called it. It stopped 3,000 feet over our heads, and we're both laying there on our respective air mattresses. And I noted again that it was quiet out. And from underneath this thing, dead center, and the underside of it was black, but we could see something in the center that looked like made like a little bubble or something that denoted it was the center of the thing. And there was a light that came on just like boom, like someone hit a switch. And it was a column of white light that came from directly underneath the triangle and landed square in the middle of our campfire. And if you've ever seen like a high-power searchlight cutting through fog, you see a column of white light. That's what this was like. But of course, there was no fog. There was just this column of visible light. And I'm looking at it. Toby's looking at it. And again, I'm in that calm mood. I'm not. I'm interested, but not much more than that. And that lasted for probably 60 seconds, maybe even less. And then it turned off. And then immediately, in its stead, there came what looked like a laser beam. It was purplish red. It was about the diameter of a lead pencil. And 1977, lasers were kind of new. I had never seen one except on television. So I saw this thing. I immediately recognized it for what it was. And what it was doing was this laser thing would turn on, land at a spot in our campsite. I don't say it landed, it was just there. It appeared in our campsite somewhere and then reappear disappear for a millisecond and then reappear somewhere else. And it would do that like 10 times a second. So it was like this dancing beam of red light. And it hits my car, it's a campsite, it hits me in the chest a couple times, never felt a thing. I know it hit my friend. And I remember thinking, this thing's checking us out. You know? I mean, I don't think the word scanning was in my vocabulary, but I thought, yeah, it's checking us out. And that lasted a good 3 minutes. And then we're both sitting there in silence. And my friend broke the silence. He stood up and said, "Show's over." And he went over to the tent, threw his air mattress in the tent, and we'd swiped a couple of blankets from the hospital and brought them with us. And he just fell on top of the air mattress, and I followed him. I followed suit. I felt all of a sudden, after this laser beam thing stopped, all I wanted to do was go to sleep. I mean, that's all I wanted to do. I didn't want to do anything else. I wanted to get in that tent and close my eyes. And that's what I did. The last thing I thought was, Toby, you were wrong, man, because the crickets and the tree frogs never did come back.
They didn't?
I was out. Like, the minute my head hit that plastic pillow, I was gone. Now, you know, I didn't bother to take off my boots or my shirt or anything, and that becomes significant a little later. So we were out. I came to some hours later, and what happened was there were these green and yellow and white flashing lights, and they were at odd intervals, and they were incredibly bright, and they lit up that tent, I mean, like a ballpark at night. It was just like an old school flashbulb from a camera from the 60s. They were that bright, that intense. And I woke up and I don't have my wits about me. I'm confused, and I'm thinking, oh yeah, we're camping. Yeah, that's right. Toby's here, we're camping. And these lights, I'm trying to rationalize what they are, and I'm thinking, well, they're probably the overhead lights from a park ranger's truck. You know, they're here to kick us out of the park. And of course it wasn't. And there was a low droning noise, I call it. if you've ever stood next to a big piece of industrial machinery, there's that noise that's more powerful than it is loud. That's what this was like. I heard this noise, and I struggled to my elbows. And in one of these flashes of light, I could see my shoes were unlaced halfway down. And I thought, what the, how did that happen? I mean, one of the things they teach you in the Air Force, probably in any armed service, is how to take good care of your feet, because if you can't walk, you're of no use. So I immediately took off my boots, and I noticed my socks were on sideways. Now, I would never do that. And I thought, this is really strange. And I put them, but I didn't think that much of it. I put them back on properly, laced them up. And in one of these flashes of light, I can see that my friend Toby is on his knees. And he's peering out of the tent, and he's looking at something. He's fixated on something. And I spoke up, and I said, hey, Tobe, what is it? Is it park rangers? What's out there? And in these flash of light, I could see that he had tracks of tears down the right side of his cheek. And then that's when the fear set in. That's when I got scared. I could not imagine what in the world would make this guy cry. And then I went from being, passive to being just absolutely scared out of my wits.
Okay, go ahead. How many hours did all of this take?
This is about 4.5 hours from when we crashed. The best we can recall. We don't remember looking at our watch before we got into tent, so we're not sure about the time. Both of our watches had stopped at 2:40.
Really?
So yeah, and that's interesting. As EMTs, a good watch was necessary to do the job, and that watch never worked again. It was a birthday gift from my wife. It was 2 years old. It was an Elgin. Of course, it was a wind-up watch, which is what they had at the time.
Yeah.
But it was a good watch. It wasn't a cheap watch. And I wish I'd kept it, because I'd like to have had somebody analyze it, determine what made it, stop working.
Yeah, you should have kept it, Terry.
I know.
What's the matter with you?
There's about 100 things I should have kept, but didn't. But that's surely one of them. But yeah, my friend Toby had the same experience. His watch never worked again. And it was crazy? I couldn't wear a watch for a year without having it stop working after about 6 weeks.
Why do you think? Did you have any radiation in you?
Well, I'll get to that.
Okay.
I think so. I think so. We both suffered injuries, and I'll get to them.
Okay.
I want to get back to when Toby was crying and he's looking outside, and I asked him, are there park rangers out there? And that's when he said, put his fingers across his lips in a universal "hey, shut up" kind of thing. And he, in a whisper, he said, "Be quiet. I think they're still out there." So I whisper, "Who, Toby? Who's still out there?" And I got on my knees and I pulled back the flap of my tent about 2 inches, and I look out and I see two things. This giant triangle that had been 3,000 feet over us some hours before has now descended, and this thing is no more than 30 feet off the ground. I'm so glad that we were offset to the side, because I would hate to have been directly underneath this thing. And it was absolutely enormous. And we could only see one side of it, and I'd estimate it to be a city block in length. It was absolutely enormous. And then the second thing I saw was, I thought they were kids. And I asked my friend Toby, I said, "Toby, man, what are these kids doing out here in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the night?" And he's still choked up, and he said, "Terry, man, those ain't no little kids. Look at them. They took us and they hurt us. Don't you remember? Look at them, Terry. They're not human beings." And I looked again, and they were a fair distance away, but I could see them fairly clearly. The points of light on the tips of the triangles, that was the light source that was flashing through the tent. These lights were flashing. And when it would light up the meadow, I could see these little guys were paired up in 2s and 3s, and they're walking all over this meadow. They're not looking down like they're searching for something. They're walking around like tourists or something. They were about 2.5 to 3 feet tall. They were, of course, gray. I could not tell if they were wearing tight-fitting garments or if that was just the way they were made. They had large bulbous heads, and as they're walking, they had this distinctive gait. They walked like they had sore feet, or like their knees were hinged to go back a couple inches. It was odd. I don't know how to describe it better than that, but they had a distinctive way of walking. And I'm stunned. I'm terrified and stunned. And I'm terrified these things are going to come over and, knock on our door. Luckily, they're far enough away that I didn't think that they were interested in us, and whatever interest they had in us was gone. So we watched them for a couple seconds, a couple minutes maybe, and then again, from underneath this triangle in the middle, there came another light, and it had that same visible white light quality that the original beam that came down and hit our campfire. It was that kind of, searchlight cutting through fog quality. This beam was circular. It was like a cylinder. It was about 25 feet in diameter, and it was right from the center of this thing. And as soon as that light came on, these little guys all turned toward it, and they all started walking toward it. And not in a hurry, but just kind of meandering. And we watched them as in twos and threes, they'd step into this light, and they would dissolve into the light. Very much like the 1970 Star Trek thing. They had a transporter or something where people stood and they dissolved. It was that kind of thing, very similar to that. But they would just dissolve and disappear. And we watched them until the last two guys stepped into that circle, and they dissolved. And as soon as they were gone, that light, it's like someone hit a switch, it turned off. And the droning noise that we'd been hearing stopped abruptly. And the lights on the tips, on the apex of the triangle, on all 3 points, they switched from multicolor, green, yellow, and white. They switched to pure white. And I called this thing on the tip of the triangle a light bar, because it ran up and down the length of the craft. And there was a beam of light that would move up and then down and up and down that light bar. And I remember thinking, I bet that's what makes it look like it's twinkling like a star when it's in the sky. It was just an odd thought. So we didn't know if they were all gone or if some had hung back and were still there. We just didn't know. So we were crouched and just scared to death. And we watched this thing take off. And when it took off, it didn't take off like a rocket ship. It just lifted off like a hot air balloon and went higher and higher. And the 3 lights became a single light, and then it was gone. And my friend's hyperventilating, and I'm telling him to get control of himself. And I know this sounds odd. All I had over my head was this piece of canvas. But I was terrified at the idea of stepping outside of that tent and running for the car. I did not want to be exposed. And to this day, I still have this, I'm still uncomfortable walking across an open field. As a matter of fact, I won't walk across an open field by myself to this day. I'll walk a mile to get around it, but I won't cut across it, not by myself.
Wow.
And
wow.
Yeah, we watched it lift off, and my friend said, we got to go. We have to get out of here. And I knew he was right, and I grabbed the keys to my car and made sure I had my wallet, and he grabbed his flashlight. He left his backpack there, unfortunately. He had that backpack sitting between us near the campfire. Mm-hmm. And, there was a camera inside that bag. He never once, the thought of taking a picture of this thing never once crossed our minds. Gosh. Can you believe that? It makes no sense whatsoever. And I'm such a photography nut. I mean, at the time, I took photos of everything, to everyone's annoyance. That was my hobby. But, it never crossed my mind. So we darted out of the tent, ran to the car, got in the car, locked the doors. I turned the dome light on, and I said, "Are we good?" And he knew what I meant, because he's got the flashlight on. He's looking under the seats and in the back seat to make sure we're alone. And boy, we just both feel bad. I felt so bad. I had never been so thirsty in my life. I said, "Toby, man, look around this car. See if you can find me something to drink. I'll drink anything if it's not poison." Because come to find out later, we were, seriously dehydrated. And we hit the road and made it back to Blacktop and started driving north, headed back to the base. And, whatever they did to me, they gave my friend Toby a double measure, because he was hurting worse than I was. He was kind of curled up into a ball next to me on that big, the big bench seats like they had in the old Chevrolets.
Mm-hmm.
So he was kind of curled up into a ball, and he was in pain. I was in pain. And then the sun came up, and as soon as that light hit my eyes, I felt like somebody threw sand in my eyes.
Mm.
I found out later that we both had what was called flash burn. It's what an arc welder would get if they didn't wear that face mask.
Yeah.
So, it's a sunburn. It's a severe sunburn to the cornea of your eye is what it is. It's very painful. I mean, it feels like you have sand in your eyes.
Mm. When you got into the car, and I'm assuming you went straight home, were you okay? So you weren't living at the base; you were living at home.
No, we were both living in NCO housing on the base.
Okay. When you got back to the base, you still didn't say anything to anybody?
Well, we went to the hospital. We were so sick. Our wives immediately took us to the hospital. When I got home, I dropped Toby off, and this really was about 6 hours of no conversation. We were just both stunned and hurt, and I dropped him off at his house, and I think I said, "See ya," and I drove the couple blocks to my house, and I walked in the door, and my wife was like, "Oh, you're back early," and she's like, What happened to you?" And I'm like, "I don't know, but what do we have to drink? Because I'm sure thirsty."
Oh.
And she made some powdered lemonade, and I drank and drank until I couldn't hold anymore. And she helped me get out of my boots, and she felt my forehead. And she said, "I think you have a temperature." So she found a thermometer and took my temperature, and I had 103, or a tad over 103 fever. So no wonder, I had body aches. I also had this sunburn. And she's saying, like, "Well, why didn't you use sunscreen?" And I'm like, "Well, we weren't out in the sun, we weren't out in the sun that much." I had a cap on all the time. I never took my shirt off. I couldn't account for it. But I was sunburned on the soles of my feet, under my arms. Every inch of my body was beet red. I never blistered. I never peeled. But it was painful, like a sunburn. So I had that, and then this flash burn thing to my eyes. We went to the hospital, and I knew that Toby was there too, because we parked in the parking lot. I could see his car. And we went inside. Now, remember, we both worked at this hospital. This was the same emergency room where Toby and I worked together. And I thought it was odd. They split us up, and they put us in two separate treatment rooms. And I had one of the most thorough medical exams I've ever had in my life. And my eyes were closed for most of it, because I could not stand that overhead light. It just killing my eyes. And they drew a lot of blood from me. And the doctors, asked, "Well, what happened to you guys? How did you get this sick? How did you get, they got 2 IVs running in me because I'm so dehydrated." And they said, "Well, how did you get sunburned?" And they had a lot of questions, and I didn't have any answers. I said, "Look, I don't know." I knew this. I was not going to tell them that we saw a UFO. I was not going to do that. We had decided that when we left. So I told them, I told them the truth. I said, we didn't feel well. We went to bed. We woke up sick as dogs, and came home. So I just kind of left the part of the UFO out of the story.
Okay, so what was the outcome of your blood work and all the tests that they took?
My admitting diagnosis was acute dehydration and flash burn to the eyes.
Okay, so how did they explain that? The flash burns to your eyes?
They didn't explain it. They had no explanation for it. They could describe my symptoms, what happened to me, but as far as explanations, they didn't know any more than we knew. But they admitted those. But before they admitted us, before I got admitted, I'm in that exam room, and the base commander, who I knew of but had never met, he was a full colonel, and then our hospital commander, who I knew very well, and then two guys in civilian casual clothing. The four of them came into the treatment room and asked the doctor to excuse himself for a minute because they wanted to talk to me. And the doc says, yeah, we're just winding up. And he goes out, he shuts the door. So I got these guys in the room with me. And the only one that spoke was the hospital commander, the guy that I knew. And he was extremely formal, very formal, uncharacteristically so. He said, Sergeant Lovelace, you're to have no contact with Sergeant Tobias in any way, shape, or form. He says that means not verbally, not in person, not by telephone. You're not to give him anything. He's not to give you anything. If you run into him in the BX, you're to immediately turn around and walk in the opposite direction. You're not to try to communicate with each other by third parties. And he went on and on and on with this no contact order.
But there was no mention that you were in contact with a UFO. Nothing. They did not know this, but yet they're telling this to you. So didn't you suspect something?
I did suspect something, and I'll tell you what, they verified it for me. I think what had happened was my friend left his backpack there, and his backpack had his address in it. And so I'll tell you the story. When I'm in my hospital room, I stayed 2 nights, 3 days. On the evening of my second night, I know I'm going home the next day. And they're putting salve in my eyes because my eyes are still hurting, and they keep the lights off in the room. And my night nurse came in with an injection for me. And in back of her, they came these two guys in blue business suits. And I mean, they look like cops. I mean, I don't want to stereotype anyone.
Not the men in black?
They weren't in black. They were in blue business suits.
The men in blue. But
I could see their suit coats were unbuttoned, and I could see shoulder holsters. So they were armed, and one guy was about 50, shorter, with a flat top haircut. The other guy was tall, and they identified themselves to the nurse. They were special agents from the Office of Special Investigations, the OSI.
Yeah.
Now, for those people that may not know, in the Air Force, we have a security police that's responsible for guarding things and the like. And then there's an investigative branch of the security police called the OSI. OSI is to the Air Force what NCIS is to the Navy, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They showed me their credentials, their badge, and they had the military ID. I could see their rank. The older guy was a major. The younger guy was a captain. And they pulled up a chair right next to the head of my bed. And as they're doing that, the nurse is kind of walking out of the room, and the older guy, I don't know if he did this just to kind of to set the tone of our meeting or what, but he said, shut the door on your way out, kind of rudely to this nurse. And I thought, boy, that's kind of uncalled for, you know? And the captain, they shut the door to my room, and the captain went down to the foot of my bed, because this wasn't an electric bed. It was a crank bed. There was a crank at the base of the bed where you could crank up the head of the bed. And that's what they did. They cranked it up so I was in a sitting position. And this older guy reached over and flipped on the overhead lights. And I immediately was in pain. Immediately I felt like somebody threw sand in my eyes. And I said, sir, and I got my eyes closed. I said, sir, can you turn that up, please? My eyes really hurt. And And he said, "Gotta see what we're doing here, son. Can't work in the dark."
Mm.
And I said, "Sir, I'm scared to death. I was a pretty straight kid. I'd never been in trouble in my life." And I asked this guy, I said, this major, I said, "Sir, am I in some kind of trouble?" And he smiles real big and he looks over at the captain and they both chuckle a little bit. And he had this Mississippi accent, Mississippi, Alabama, something, kind of like Calvin Parker speaks, if you've ever heard Calvin talk. And he said, "Son, would we be here if you weren't in trouble?" And I thought, oh my God,
no.
What did we do? I thought, did we burn the forest down? What did we do? And what happened was the park rangers found our campsite.
Uh-huh.
They called the base commander and said, "It looks like 2 of your airmen have a camp set up out here, and they left everything. It looks like they're coming back, but they're on restricted grounds. They're on federal land. We just want you to be aware of what's going on." So they knew, his name was in the backpack, and of course he worked in the hospital. They called the hospital commander. This was a small hospital. We knew everyone knew one another, and everybody in the squadron knew that Toby and I were taking this camping trip. So it wasn't too hard for them to put 2 and 2 together. So I think that's how they found out. But these 2 OSI agents asked me a bunch of questions. They're like, "Son, why did you set up this campsite? Did you have the intention on coming back? Why would you leave everything there?" He said, "I don't understand that. You have to explain that to me." And I said, "Well, sir, we just woke up and we were sick as dogs, and we just wanted to go home." And he said, "And you left everything there?" And he says, "Let me ask you boys, do you boys have a little marijuana plot growing out there? Is that what this is all about?" Now that really scared me, because I thought, what the heck? What if somebody, just by happenstance, was growing marijuana out there? They could hang it on us. That would have been, the end of my military career and probably some time in Leavenworth. I mean, it was, today it's not as big a deal, but back then it was a big deal.
Wow. And
so I'm very scared. And I think intimidation was intentional. It was part of the interrogation process. So he finishes with his interrogation, and I read me my rights under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, and I still don't know what I'm accused of. And the captain leaves. They had me sign some forms, and I signed some forms. I know one was an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, which I could care less about. I signed.
But what was in that non-disclosure? What was in that? Do you remember what you read?
I didn't read anything. My eyes hurt. I couldn't. I could read the heading of each document. I could make out most of it. But I was scared.
So whatever happened to you, they did not want you to ever talk about it.
Well, I wouldn't find out for a little while. I find out about 8 weeks later. What he had done is he laid out 6 forms on the tray table of my bedside table, and he said, he asked me to draw an outline, draw a picture of where we were, draw a little box for the tent, draw the car, and show us where we were, where our campsite was. And I did that on a sheet of blank paper, and that's when he laid out these forms. I said, "Sir, what are these forms?" And he said, "Son, this is routine. These are all waiver and consent forms. They give us the right to search your house." And I said, "Search my house?" And he says, "Well, just to see if you have any contraband. You don't have any marijuana, do you?" And I said, "No, sir." He says, "Well, you don't have anything illegal, do you?" I said, "No, not at all." He said, "Well, you wouldn't mind if we just took a look, and then we can put this thing to bed. Is that all right with you?"
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah, that's weird. Yeah. And, of course, I didn't have the benefit of life experience. I certainly didn't have my law degree, or I don't know how much differently it could have went, but I signed these forms, and he was satisfied. He scooped them up, put them in his briefcase. The captain leaves. I found out that the captain left early. He went, and they searched my house, scared the hell out of my poor wife. They didn't break anything. They didn't tear up anything, but they thoroughly looked everywhere. They did take my wife had a little camera, a little 35 millimeter cheap camera, like, it wasn't even 35 millimeter. It was those cartridges like they used to use. It was a cheap little camera, birthday party kind of camera. They took that. And also, I had a dark room set up where I could develop black and white prints. And as I said, you can't use a camera anywhere on a nuclear base. So what I did was one night there was a beautiful full moon, and I set up my tripod in the backyard, and I took some time-lapse photos, got some really nice prints of the full moon. And they took those prints. I don't know why, but they took those, yeah. Oh. Yeah, they took those.
Oh, my God. Did you ever get them back?
No, never got them back.
Did they?
Got my wife's camera back. With the pictures they developed.
Did you ask why they didn't give you your pictures back?
No. They weren't taking questions, and I
oh my God.
I mean, I still had the negatives. I could make more prints, but I just thought it was odd. So, anyway, this thing winds up, and he packs his briefcase, and the head of my bed is near the door. The head of my bed, then there's like a side table, and then the door. And he puts his hand against the door. And he gets down next to my ear, and he says in a whisper, "Son, I know, and you two knuckleheads stumbled onto something out there, didn't you?" And I didn't know how to answer him. And I didn't say anything. And he gets an angry look on his face, and he says, "Oh, I know you know what I'm talking about." And he says, "What I need your camera and I need your film." And I said, "Sir, I never took a single photograph of anything." And he knew. I don't know how he knew, but he knew. He knew that we'd seen something. And I think they were, you know what I think? I think that they knew that I had this interest in photography. I think that they were worried that I maybe had a 36 exposure roll of black and white film of this thing. God, I wish I had.
Oh, gosh. Oh, I know. But they would have found it and taken it from you. And if you had published it in any way, they would have been after you anyway.
Sure. That would have been direct violation of the non-disclosure agreement. Now I don't care. 40 years later, I'm a lawyer. If they want to, put me in jail, go ahead.
But why didn't they? If they figured that you had seen something and it was more UFO or alien, that they would have been interested in what you saw.
They weren't.
But
they
why?
Were interested because I think they know. I think they knew. I think they knew better than we did. Like I say, that's my guess. I don't know, but you would think they'd be saying, did you guys see anything funny down there? Is there anything? Did you notice any lights in the sky? But no, nothing like that at all. Nothing like that at all. The only hint that he gave that he knew what was going on after he had thoroughly intimidated me was to say, I know and you know. So that was it, and I was scared to death.
So what happened to Toby? So did you stay overnight in the hospital?
Yeah, I spent 2 nights and 3 days. I had no contact. Well, I did see Toby one last time. They cut him orders. It's called PCS, Permanent Change of Station. They cut orders for him to go to Japan, and they cut him orders at light speed. I mean, he was gone in a matter of weeks. And one day, coming home from the grocery store, we're in my wife's car, my wife's little Carmen Gia, and I said, Toby and I only lived about 2.5 blocks from one another. And I said, stop by Toby's house. I just want to run in and tell the guy goodbye. I just felt like I owed him that. But it was a strange thing. This guy was my best friend before all this happened. And something had changed. Something was different between us. We had no conversation in the car on the way back. We had this no contact order, but I'll be honest with you, I really didn't care to see the guy. Wow. And to this day, I can't reconcile those feelings, but that's the way I felt. And my wife says, "Look, Terry, I don't want you to mess around with these OSI people. They scare me." I said, "Yeah, they scare me too, but just pull up to the curb. I'll run inside. I want to say goodbye, wish them well." So she did, you know. And I hopped out of the car and jogged up to the door, and I went through the doorway, same one I've walked through 100 times before. And they were packing, and I saw his wife walk down the hallway, and she saw me, and she gave me a hard look, and she said, "You're not supposed to be here." And I said, I know. I just want to say goodbye and wish you guys good luck.
Wow.
Well, Toby was in the bedroom and must have heard our exchange, and he walked around, and you gotta understand, Toby was a guy that was real particular about his appearance. I mean, his uniform was always pressed, his shoes were always shined, his haircut was always within regulation. I mean, when he dressed casually, he dressed well. I mean, that's just who he was. So he comes out of the bedroom, and he's a train wreck. I mean, his hair's all disheveled. He has on a dirty white T-shirt. He's barefoot. And I just kind of dismissed it as, well, I guess, you're packing. That goes hand in hand with, packing all your belongings, I guess. And it was an awkward moment. I didn't think it would be awkward, but it was awkward. And I really thought it would be appropriate to embrace the guy.
Yeah.
But I didn't. And instead I held out my hand, and we did this awkward exchange back and forth, and finally made contact, and I shook his hand, and I said, "Yeah, my friend, I just want to wish you luck. I know you guys are going to Japan." And he was about 6 inches shorter than I am, and I could smell hard liquor on his breath.
Oh, no.
Now this is a guy that, we barbecued a lot. We played cards together, the four of us. And he would never drink more than he'd drink a beer maybe, and maybe half a second one, and then use the other half on his chicken he was barbecuing. But I never saw him drink more than a beer and a half. And his eyes were bloodshot. And we're only about a foot apart, and he looks up at me. And the only thing he said was, "It happened, didn't it, Terry?" And I felt stunned by that. And I looked down at him, and I said, "Yes, my brother, it really happened." And he said, "Yeah, but why us?"
Yeah, really. Why you? Why you
And
guys?
I said, "Man, I don't have a clue." And with that, I broke my gaze with him. I looked down at my shoes, and I just turned and ran out of his house.
Well, how come you didn't, neither one of you wanted to sit down and talk about what happened, and maybe share maybe something that would come, stir up your memory as to what else might have happened to you two?
See, that's what doesn't make any sense. You have two people that go through probably one of the most traumatic things that can happen to anyone in a lifetime. And it's a shared experience. Common sense would be, when you get in the car to drive back, you're going to compare notes and talk about it and debrief. I mean, that's the normal. But we didn't do that. We didn't say half a dozen words to one another, and we certainly didn't talk about it. The only thing we talked about was, we're not telling anybody about this thing we saw. So I didn't know what to call it. I mean, UFOs were kind of classified as flying saucers back then. Yeah. I don't know. I didn't even know how to describe the thing. And but something had. We were changed people on a lot of levels. I left that park, and this is all ingrained in my mind. I mean, like the birth of my kids. I mean, it was a major event in my life. I mean, I felt like I went down there with Toby. We were a couple of kids having fun on a weekend, and we came back to adults. I really felt that way.
Did you ever talk to him again?
I tried. He went to Japan, and his wife and my wife were friends. And his wife, I got out of the military before he did. I separated out, and my enlistment ended in October of 1979. And I had to finish school, and his wife called my wife, got her number from, Toby's wife had my wife's mother's name and phone number, so that she could call her and find out where we landed, because we didn't know where we were going. So, but we didn't hear from her for a couple of years. So it's like 1982, and my wife gets a call and said, yeah, hi, I'm in the area. We'd like to stop by. And she saw, cool, you and Toby? I know Terry would love to talk to Toby. And she said, no, it's not me and Toby. Toby and I got divorced. And then she said, oh, I'm sorry. And she said, yeah, I'll explain. So what she done is she told us that Toby had a steady decline. He was a drinker all of a sudden. He had nightmares. He had personality changes. Now, I had my own struggles with this. I mean, I had nightmares to deal with, and trouble sleeping, and phobias. But he really had major problems, and they got divorced. And the last that she knew, he was in Flint, Michigan. And I remembered I had his dad's phone number up in Flint. So, and I found out why she actually apologized. She said, I'm sorry that I was so rude to you when you came by the house to say goodbye. And she said, Toby told me this camping trip was all your idea. And I'm like, no, it wasn't my idea. It was Toby's idea, but that doesn't make any difference at all. And she says, yeah, I know, but we were all under a lot of stress. And I said, yeah, we were. So she'd married this guy who was a long haul truck driver, and they were in their truck. They didn't have a trailer on it, but they were in their truck, and they were living in California somewhere. So they spent an evening with us. We had dinner and talked about old times, and with her new husband there, we kind of left Toby out of the loop, and I verified the number for his dad with her, and then the next day I called and got a hold of the dad. The dad knew who I was, and I said, yeah, I'm just, I was in the Air Force with Toby. I want to call and say hi to him, see how he's doing. And he knew who I was.
Oh.
And he said, well, Toby's not here. He stays here sometimes, but he's in and out a lot. And I said, well, can I leave my phone number, please? And please have him call me. And he said, yeah, I will. So I gave him my phone number. Never heard back from him. Never heard from Toby. Never heard from the old man again. And about 6 months passed, and I called him back, and the number's disconnected, of course.
Oh, jeez.
So,
that's too bad.
Well, there is an interesting twist to all this, though. And that is that after I graduated from law school and went to work, I was working on a case that involved the FBI. And I got to know this FBI agent fairly well. And, on Fridays after work, we'd maybe meet at the local watering hole and have a beer, discuss the week, and have a few laughs and start our weekend. So one Friday night I asked him, I said, you know what, I got a good buddy of mine that I haven't seen in years, and I'd like to know where he's at. Could you find him for me? And he says, sure. He says, I can't open an investigation, but, as a favor to you, I'll look. I can find anybody. If he's not a fugitive, I can find him. And he told me, he says, bring me everything that you know about the guy. Put everything you can think of that you know about this guy on a sheet of paper. Everything. What he likes, what he didn't like, a description, what you know about his family, his wife, everything, where he went to school, everything that you know about the guy. And, you work 3 years on night shift with a guy. You get to know him pretty well.
Yeah.
So I had a fair amount of information, and I gave it to him the very next weekend. And he says, yeah, I'll see what I can do. So a week later, I got a call from him, and he says, yeah, be sure and meet me at the bar. I got some information for you on your friend. And I said, okay, good. So I met him, and he was very serious. and he says, Terry, I have bad news for you. Your friend is dead. And I said, what? Toby is a young man. How can he be dead? And he said it was an automobile accident on I-94 out of Flint. It was a head-on collision, and he's deceased.
Oh, my God.
And then I found out, when I went to research this book, I didn't want to put it in the book because there's some things in there that are unflattering. They're true, but they're unflattering. So I didn't want to, but I wanted to find out his, I wanted to find his obit. And I was thinking that if because I go to Michigan now and then to see friends, and I thought, maybe I could stop by and, put some flowers on his grave or something. So I searched, I found his obit, and he was alive until September 4th, 2007. The guy lied to me. He lied to me.
Why?
I have no idea why. I don't know if maybe there's... The only thing I can think of is maybe we got a file somewhere that's tagged. I mean, they really did not want us to get together. They did not want us to put our heads together. Because I guess one person having a story about a UFO experience is one matter, but two people having a shared experience has a lot more credibility to it.
All right, so what happened in 2012? You went to the doctors for a routine x-ray. What happened?
2012 changed everything. 2012, I woke up and I retired from the state of Vermont. I was state's attorney there for their Board of Medical Practice and retired January 7th, 2012. And when I did, my wife and I, we have adult children living in Dallas. So, we didn't want to, we had friends in Vermont, but we wanted to be near our kids. And so we moved to Dallas, where we are now. And in October of that year, almost 10 months later, I get up one morning, and as soon as my feet hit the floor, I realized that I can't stand because I got pain, really bad pain in my right knee. And it hurt so bad that I had trouble bearing weight on it. And I told my wife, I said, I get all my medical care from the VA. And I told her, I said, I need to go to the ER because something's wrong with my leg. And she took me to the ER, and I waited my turn and saw a nice PA who seemed very knowledgeable and took me into the exam room. And the x-ray tech took two x-rays of my leg, one from straight on, and then another one with my leg sideways and bent. So you could see my leg from both angles. And I think I sent you the x-rays.
I have them, yeah.
And she takes these two x-rays, and she's kind of confused, and she came out, and she made sure there was, nothing on the table, that, she had clear view of my leg. And she took two more photographs or x-rays. And she said, Sir Lovelace, were you ever in an accident of some kind? Did you have a shrapnel wound or something? Or an injury to that leg? And I said, no, other than the skin and knee, I never had any trouble with that leg. And she says, well, there's some foreign bodies in your leg. And she took a whole bunch more x-rays. And I said, well, look, they're my x-rays. May I see them? And she says, yeah, I called the radiologist. He's going to come down and look at them for you. So I guess that meant, radiologist will show them to you. So I wait. Guy walks in a white lab coat, right? And looking kind of annoyed. And he walks over and he pops these two x-rays up on a light box. And I can see them, but they're not close enough for me to see them in detail. And he says, I can see you've been in some kind of accident. And he walks over and he pokes me in the knee and he says, it's going to be right there. And I said, what's going to be right there? He says, there's going to be a scar right there because this thing above your knee is deep inside your fascia and you can't violate the integrity of your skin and put something this deep in the human body without there leaving a scar. It's just not possible. And I said, well, doctor, I don't have a scar there. And he looked, and he went so far as he had a handheld blacklight And it's dark in the x-ray room anyway, but he killed all the rest of the lights and examined my knee with a black light and turned the lights back on and just shook his head. And I said, well, doctor, how often is it that you find a foreign object in a human body and there not be a corresponding scar? And he said, never. He said, I've been a radiologist 23 years. I've never seen it happen before. And he says, there's more.
Oh.
If you look at that x-ray, you can see there's a little square structure about the size of your fingernail with 2 wires attached to it.
Oh, well, wait a minute now. I have another picture with the wires. Yeah.
Yep. That's above my knee and to the right. Now, I may have mentioned that I was a runner until I had my heart attack in 2005. And I didn't run marathons or anything, but I was a consistent runner. I ran almost every day. I'd run 2 or 3, 4 or 5 miles if I had a good day. And I noticed something. And I noticed this in 1979 when I started running. As soon as I would hit the 2-mile mark in my run, I mean, give or take 50 yards, but I mean, like clockwork, there was a spot on my right leg by my knee, above my right knee, that would go completely numb. And it would stay that way throughout the rest of my run and for about 30 minutes after my run. And I could take a pin and stick it in and define it. And it was a perfect circle about the size of a $50. And that area would go completely numb. And in 1982, I asked our family doctor, I said, what's the reason for this? And she says, well, you know what it sounds like to me? She says, it sounds like a histemic reaction. If it doesn't interfere with your run, I wouldn't worry about it. And I didn't. But when I saw that x-ray, I realized that this structure, whatever it is, with the 2 wires attached, lay right underneath that spot on my leg that goes numb.
Oh.
And that, to me, validated that whatever is in there probably goes back to 1977.
They didn't take it out?
They did not take it out.
Wait a minute. They're probably following you.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Well, let me explain that. Because I was pretty freaked out. First thing I wanted to do was get it out of my leg. And if you look at the second x-ray, there's more.
Oh, wait a minute. Which second x-ray?
There's another x-ray of what's below my knee. In my calf muscle, where my leg is bent.
I've got 2 x-rays up.
Yep. Do you see one where my leg is bent?
No, I don't think I have that. I just have the 2 x-rays. One's a flower and then there's an arrow pointing to something else.
Okay, the one that's a flower, that's in the calf of my leg. Are you talking about, we're talking about x-rays here,
yeah,
not
x-ray.
photographs, right?
Yeah, it looks like a flower.
Yeah, it does look like a flower. Well, here's the thing. They found this structure that looks like a transistor or something above my knee, and below my knee, that thing that looks like a flower is inside the calf muscle of my leg, right in the center. And the radiologist first showed me this picture of the electrical thing with the wires.
The wires, yeah.
And then he said, and there's more. And he said, you've got some bones in your knee. And that struck me as funny. And I said, well, aren't I supposed to have bones in my knee? And he just popped it up in the view box. And, you don't need to be a medical person to see that floret-shaped thing.
Well,
and he says, I don't know what these are, but he said, these are the consistency of bone tissue. And he said, but I've never seen bone tissue spontaneously sprout in the middle of a muscle, and I've certainly never seen them arrange themselves in a symmetrical pattern. So I have no idea what these things are.
Terry, why didn't you have them taken out?
I couldn't, and
Why?
I'll explain that. I went to a surgeon. I went to a VA surgeon, and I took the x-rays with me. And I said, I got these things in my leg, and I want them out. And I showed him the x-rays, and he was really, really intrigued by it. And he said, yeah. He said, we'll take them out. And I said, well, I insisted that we have a forensic-like protocol where he would certify that he removed them and that he handed them to me and that I took possession of them. Because I wanted that because to have the integrity to show that these things actually came from my body.
Yeah.
They weren't something I picked up. And So he looks over my medical history, and then he says, he says, I see last year you had a stent put in your heart, and you had a heart attack in 2005 with a triple bypass. Is that right? And I said, yes. And he says, well, I can't operate on you until you get a clearance letter from a cardiologist. And I said, well, why do you need that? And he said, because you're at risk. He says, you have a history of heart disease, and these things are medically benign. They're not hurting you. He said, look, we got 500,000 vets walking around out there with shrapnel in their body that they want taken out in the worst way, but we don't do it. I mean,
wait a minute, Terry.
If it's not bothering you, they let it stay. And he says it's a risk-benefit analysis. He says the risk to your harm, the risk of you having a heart attack or a heart trouble, is greater than the benefit of having it removed.
That's very strange. Is this the VA hospital doctor?
Yeah, well, I talked to 2 VA doctors, got the same answer. Then I thought, well, these guys are part of the military.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
So I went to a private doctor, to a private cardiologist, and paid for it out of my pocket. Yeah. And I got the same answer. Oh. Need a cardiac clearance letter. And it is. I talked to some medical people. It's what's called the standard of care. Again, it's a risk-benefit analysis, and no matter how intriguing the things are, they won't remove them.
Oh my God! Well, you're being tracked. Have you seen any other? Have you felt that maybe you may have been abducted again? Was there any time lapse?
Yeah, there was an incident in 2007 where I was out on a motorcycle ride, and I described this in my book, and. It's a Sunday. It was in the fall, in the autumn. It's beautiful in Michigan, and I used to like to get up in the morning and really early before my family was awake. I'd let them sleep in. I'd put on my leather jacket, hop on my bike, and go out and just take a ride for the pleasure of the ride. Come back, and then I would make pancakes. It was like a routine thing. And I mean, I'm known for being on time. I'm known for being punctual, and I always came back about 10:30. Give or take 5 minutes, and I had a couple of routes pre-planned that I always took, and I was always careful. I never took my bike on a gravel road because I didn't want to get a paint chip. Plus, gravel's kind of dangerous to drive on, and I just love just cruising on the blacktop. And I'm in a rural area, and I'm on this paved road early in the morning. There's no traffic out. And I remember I was coming to a turn in the road, and I had throttled back from 80 to about 65, and I'm starting into the turn, and then it's like I blinked my eye, and I'm on a gravel road, and I'm doing 35. And I thought, whoa, and I stopped the bike, and because I never took, and I'm on this gravel farm road, far enough that I can't see the blacktop. I'm a mile and a half down this farm road, nothing but soybean fields on either side of me, and I had no idea how I got there. And I mean, it's obviously it's missing time. I lost 2 hours, but I'll tell you, Noreen, it's the strangest thing. It is just like if you had a piece of motion picture film, and you cut out in the middle, a 6-foot span or something, and splice the 2 ends together. There'd be a seamless transition from one frame to the next, and that's what this was like. Mm-hmm. Oh. And I really could not wrap my head around how I got out there. But I did, and I kind of shook it off, and I blamed myself for being, lost in thought, and turned the bike around, and I wasn't frightened or anything of the sort. And I drove home, and I got home, and I got, my wife is in tears, and she's like, where have you been? I said, I've been on my motorcycle ride. And she said, it's 12:30. She said, I was about to call the police to find out if there's any accidents reported. And I said, no, it can't be 12:30. Because I didn't feel the passage of time. It felt to me like it should be 10:30. Now, I had a watch on, but I had long leather sleeves and gloves on, so I couldn't see my watch. But when I walked in the house, I didn't need to, because I could tell from the cartoons the kids were watching that it wasn't 10:30.
Wow. Well, you know what? You've probably been abducted other times as well that you didn't even think about. Are you having any more dreams? Were you having any more dreams of nightmares or anything like that?
They're episodic. They come and go. I may not have a
Oh.
dream for 6 or 8 months, and then then I'll have one. Um, so yeah, I still have them. And as a kid, I had experiences. I had I called them. I was about 6 or 7. Uh, what I called the monkey men, and we lived in St. Louis, urban St. Louis, in a 2-story house. I had the front bedroom. My sisters across the hall, my 2 older sisters, they had the other bedroom, and uh, I would wake up in the middle of the night and see these. And now this sounds crazy, but I would see these 4 little monkeys, and they looked like circus monkeys.
Mm.
And the one closest to my head would always come up to me and look at me, and it had yellow eyes, and it
Mm.
would say, "Terry, why don't you come with us?" It was like asking me permission. "Why don't you come with us and we'll go play?
Wow.
We take you home." And every time this would happen, I would think, "Do I know these? Have I done this before? Did I go with them before? I'm sure I did." But I'm not supposed to go with strangers. And some nights I think I went, and some nights I would just get scared to death and scream. And when I would scream, they would just disappear in a twirl of shadows. And the hall light would come on, and my dad would come in the room and, ask what, more monkeys? And I'm like, "Yeah, Dad,
Mm.
sorry." And, wake up the whole household. And, we were just 5 very tired people because, for a spell there, a couple times a week, I was having these horrific nightmares.
Wow.
And, that's one of the nightmares that I still have is the monkey that was always, and I think what they do is they can cloak themselves. They can
Oh,
make themselves
absolutely.
appear any way that the kid would think they're benign, that they're not,
Absolutely.
harmful. They're not scary. Um, and these things weren't scary to me. Um, but the one closest to me would always hand out a paw and say, "Come with us," like I'm supposed to take his paw.
Mm-hmm.
And in this nightmare that I still have, the monkey's there, and he asks me the same question, and he holds out his paw, and when I look at it, it's not a paw. It's these 4 gray, ugly fingers with hair on them.
My
And I
God.
just flip out. And I recognize the dream when it starts, but I can't interrupt it. It's got to play out before I can wake up.
What do you know what your blood type is?
Oh, positive.
Okay. I think that's the blood type that they go after is O positive, I think. You know, you know, um, also, it sounds like you've been having experiences with these aliens and UFOs since you were a kid. Has anybody else in your family experienced anything like that?
It's a crazy thing. It's kind of, it was like the family secret. It was something we never talked about. They would talk about, I would talk about what I saw. I would try to convince my family, yeah, I saw these things in my room. Um, but, when I was 8, and I explained this in the book, I'm playing in my backyard with a bow and arrow. I'm 8 years old, right? And I'm loading an arrow into the notch of the bowstring. And I'm looking down, and across my feet, there moves this perfectly circular shadow. And this is in May, and it's a beautiful day. There's not a cloud in the sky. It's mid-afternoon on a weekend, and it's, there are cars, and I'm in the backyard, but you can hear traffic, and there are women out in the backyards hanging up laundry, and kids running around, and dogs and cats. It's a busy place. And I see this shadow move across my legs, and I look straight up, and when I did, I saw this silver disc. Um, and I don't know, it looked like polished aluminum or something. The ends kind of curled up, and It was just absolutely flat. I mean, at 8 years old, I'd put together some model airplanes, so I had an idea how stuff was put together. And I was looking for rivets or bolts or some identifying mark, that says USAF or even CCCP or, some kind of exhaust or some kind of propulsion unit like a jet engine or propellers or something. I didn't see anything like that. And this thing wobbles a little bit in the breeze. But what was weird was when I looked up, as soon as I saw it, I had this weird auditory change. And all the sounds in the neighborhood became kind of muffled. And it sounded like I had my hands pressed against my ears. I could still hear the noises, but the sounds were like I said, like I had my hands pressed against my ears. They were muted and they were muffled. And I dropped my bow and arrow, and this doesn't make sense. I had this odd feeling that if I would lie down on the ground and look up at it, I could get a better view of the thing. Well, that makes no sense. It really makes no sense. So I laid down on the ground, and I'm looking up at this thing. And I don't know how much time passed. It seemed like just a few minutes. And then this, without warning, this thing kind of tilts a little bit and shoots off and goes from 0 to 500 miles an hour in the blink of an eye, and it's gone. And I jumped to my feet and I'm screaming, "Mom!" my poor mother runs out. She thinks I probably shot a neighbor in the head with an arrow or something. And she runs out, and I'm screaming. I don't remember screaming, but my throat hurt afterwards. And she shook me and said, "You'll stop screaming this minute." And took me inside and said, "All right, what happened?" She's checking me for blood. I said, "Mom, did you see it? It was so cool. It was a flying saucer." And she says, "Terry, I don't know what you saw, but you did not see a flying saucer." And we argued about it. And she said, "Terry, you can't tell people that you saw a flying saucer. They'll think there's something wrong with you. They'll think there's something wrong with us." The 1963 mentality, right?
Yeah. Oh,
what
my
will the neighbors
God.
think? Yeah.
Okay, you know what? You've got another show to go to, and we don't have that much time. So we got to hurry up because it's almost 7:45 for me. So your show's at 10 o'clock, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I need to be out about 8 minutes before to get connected.
Okay, so I want to go through this really fast. Okay. No, that's, oh God. Okay. What's this? The helicopter's over your house.
After I published the book, my wife and I noticed that we would hear this thump, 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 typical helicopter. And we would hear them like every other day. And we didn't think much about it at first. And my wife says, "What, do they reroute the traffic copter over our house or something?" And I'm like, "I don't know, but I'm going to find out." So these things, what they would do is they wouldn't just right over the house. They would do a circle around my house, sometimes 2 or 3. The layout of my house was a big tree on the left side that blocked my view of the horizon, and then they always came between 9 and 11 when the sun was right there on the other side of that tree, and that limited my field of view to 180 degrees in back of me. So I'd go out and I'd hear the noise of the helicopter, and I'd wait for it, and it'd come around out of the sun and fly over my house. And I started taking pictures of these things because I thought, I want to find out who this is. Well, and I identified through taking pictures. I have a friend in California, Dr. Bruce Solheim, who was an Army helicopter pilot, and he knows helicopters. And I sent him pictures of these, and I said, "Can you identify these?" Because they came in 3 varieties. One was an Robertson R-44, just a black helicopter. That's the one that's in that photograph that you have. And then there were a black and white Airbus 350 or something, you said. It's the same helicopter that the Michigan State Police used, but there were never any markings on this. Never, not a number. I looked up the law. The law says that, unless you're a military or a government entity, your helicopter must display the alphabetical symbol N, like in Nancy. And then there's a string of digits afterwards that identify that particular helicopter. Well, there's no markings on these things whatsoever. And sometimes they would fly so low I could see the pilots. Wow. And they always wore helmets. And when I told my friend Dr. Solheim, I told my friend Bruce about this, he said, well, that clinches it. He said they're military, because he said military helicopter pilots are required to wear helmets. Civilian helicopter pilots look down on them. They won't wear them. They don't think they need them. They don't think they're necessary. They think they interfere with their vision and are dangerous. So I've taken these pictures of these helicopters. I amassed a collection. I've got 168 photographs of these helicopters from over a 9-month period. As a matter of fact, Lou Elizondo came to my house and spent 2 days with me. He wanted to hear my story and then see the helicopters. And and they showed up. So some of them were military, but when I would take these pictures, I'd blow up the image to look for some kind of markings, and there was never any. But I noticed sometimes when I blow up the pictures, there were UFOs in the background.
Wow.
And that's what you see, the thing that looks like a straw hat or a pie plate or something. That's the image blown up.
That is absolutely insane. And there's more pictures, but we don't have time. You're a 3-hour show, Terry. And you're writing another book. What's the second book on?
The second book I'm writing is not done yet, but I put an email in the back of my book, Incident at Devil's Den. It's on Amazon, by the way. It's in Kindle, in paperback, that has the photographs, and I also recorded an audio book in my own voice. But what was I saying?
Oh, what's the other book about?
Oh, the other book. In the back of my book, I put an email address, and I said, look, I'm not a therapist or a doctor, but if you've had an experience and you want to share it or talk about it, send me an email. I promise I'll get back to you. Well, my book has been out 30 months now.
Yeah.
And I've had over 1,300 emails from people.
Oh my gosh.
Telling me, and you know what I mean? It's the craziest thing. They always start the same way, but this disclaimer now, you're not going to believe this, or you're going to think I'm crazy. And then some of them tell me the most amazing stories that I believe. And so I'm de-identifying them and changing the locations to preserve their anonymity. But these stories are so amazing, I want to put them together in a collection, and that'll be my next book.
Oh, okay. Well, Terry, you're being tracked. You know you're being tracked. And I don't know if that was actually put in you when you were with your friend Toby, or if it had happened at an earlier time, because there's no way of telling. But from what I understand, once you're taken, there's other episodes that happen, and I'm sure that's what's going on with you, and I bet you're gonna have more of those, because they don't stop. Yeah. And usually also I've had other shows on this, and they also take other family members as well, not just the one. And there's a blood type, and I may be wrong, but I thought it was the O positive or O negative, and they're thinking also that it's a type of ethnic background. What's your background?
Eastern European. A little bit of English, a little bit of Irish, and then United States, but mostly Poland, Eastern European.
And I don't know what the purpose of that is, why, but this is what I heard. You got a fascinating story, and there's more to it. And I know you go to UFO meetings. Do you discuss your case? And you're probably going to the same meeting where they already know your story, but the other people that are in this group, do they also talk about their incidents? Well,
I don't have a group. I'm not a member.
No. Oh, you're not. Oh, I thought you were going to a UFO meeting.
Well, I am. It's a newly formed UFO group.
Oh, okay.
So this was an organizational meeting. They asked me to be on their board, and So they're organized as a nonprofit, and this was kind of an organizational meeting tonight. But as soon as we get, they're organized as a 501c3. They put together this organization before MUFON had its problems. But they want to be like a MUFON type organization with transparency and just try to do everything they can right. Not that MUFON does it wrong, but I thought might be fun to be on the ground floor or something. So that's where I went tonight.
Wow. Wow, that's crazy. I know there's a lot more to your story. Very fascinating, though, and thanks so much for coming on the show. And my best wishes to you, because you're making the rounds. Everybody wants you on their show.
Yes, it's a happy problem.
Yeah. Hey, everybody, don't forget, Terry Lovelace is on Facebook, and also I had posted up Terry's book and his website, www.terrylovelace.com. So go visit it, and you can buy his book. Thanks, Terry, so much for being on the show. It was so much fun. It was a pleasure to meet you, and thank you so much.
Thank you. I enjoyed myself.
Thank
Take care.
you. You too. Bye. Thanks. Good night. Good night. That was fun. Let's see. Me only. Okay. Oh, everybody, thanks so much for being here. He had another show to go to. He's going to shows like crazy. Everybody wants him on their show. I don't even know how I found him, but I did, and I was happy to have him. I hope you enjoyed the show. That's why we couldn't take questions. Sorry, guys. Royce is still having internet issues. Oops. Wait a minute. I got the wrong... what happened? Okay. Royce is having internet issues and computer issues. So he's doing okay, but still keep your prayers. Actually, pray for all my mods. And who are my mods tonight? Oh, Renee's here, and I think Crystal Triplet's here too, and Chippa Terry. Thanks, guys. Thank them. Thank Renee, Chippa Terry, and Crystal for being here. Thank you so much for being here. And I know there was super chat money and oh my gosh, let me see if I can get to it. Thank you so much, guys. Oh, I don't want to tell you. Oh my gosh, there's one way up here and I can't get it. Oh gosh. Let me see if I can find it. Hold on for a second. Let's see. Hold on. Let's see. I don't think I can get everybody. Oh, I can't see it. Darn it. Hold on. I want to say thank you. Let's see. Who is this? Oh, I'm having an awful time with this. Royce usually sends me this stuff. Oh, gosh. Hold on, guys. I'm really sorry. Hold on for a minute. Let me see if I can get this. See if I can see it. Let's see. There's Tammy Heitzman, Linda Richardson. Hi, I'm on Emmy, Victoria. Let's see. I know there was more. Guys, geez, thanks so much. I know there was more, and I really appreciate it. It's hard. I can't get to the top. I don't know who this is. Who's this? Hi on Emmy, honey. Oh, thank you so much, you guys. Thank you so much for the super chat money. That's really nice of you. Really, really nice of you. I appreciate it. Listen, I hope you enjoyed the show. I appreciate all of you being here. I love seeing you guys in the chat. There's a couple I don't see. Tall Cross isn't here tonight. Carl White, I didn't see him. Let's do some shout outs. Oh, hey, I got a show next Thursday. I got some great shows coming up, but I do have a show next Thursday. He goes by the name of Bronze Snake on YouTube. I've known him for years. He's followed me from the time I've been on live Sci-Fi with when I was a paranormal investigator with Tim Wood on Live Sci-Fi, and he's known me for years. Well, he contacted me a couple of weeks ago, and told me this horrific, oh my God, story that has happened to him. I've never in my life heard anything like it before. And he was telling me, and I said, oh my God. I said, you need to tell that story to everybody. I've never in my life heard anything like it. So he's going to come on the show next Thursday and tell his story. I don't even know what to name it. I'm trying to come up with a thumbnail for the show. I've never heard anything like it. It's crazy. So next Thursday, guys, we got another show, and I don't have my calendar, but I got some really good shows coming up. Yeah, I'm scheduled, gosh, all the way through November. So anyway, that's the deal. And let me see if I can do some shout outs here, because with Royce usually sends me all this stuff. Robert Hanna, of course, Crystal Triplet, Tammy Heitzman, Dust Bunny, The Haglin, Robert Hanna, Darren Mead, Chippa Terry, I Am Alpha. Oh, Alpha, I Am Alpha. You sent me super chat money too, honey. Thank you. Angela Lewis. Let's see. Linda Richardson. Oh, God, it's so hot in here. J.K. Karen Piotti. Anita Ackerman. Let's see. I know that we had a crowd. They weren't all signed into chat, but we had a nice crowd tonight. Lully Tooby. Anybody else? PSPR Paranormal Pursuit. Oh. Max Brand. Let's see. Oh, Annie, I didn't see you, honey. Are you still there? Thank you, Unique Annie. Oh, my God. Everybody was here tonight except for Royce. But Royce is trying his hardest to come back. Annie, thank you so much. Again, I want to thank my mods. I love them. Crystal Triplet, Renee McDowell, Chippa Terry, and Unique Annie. And, of course, Royce. And, Royce, I miss you if you're watching the show and you can't get into the... we miss you. Let's see. Anybody else want to shout out? Zoe Small, Lori Miller. Oh, okay, Carl White. There you are. You always hide in the background. Jordan Perkins, Beat 3 Airspace. Come on, guys. I want to give you a shout out. Tall Cross. I don't know what happened to Tall Cross. His dad passed away, and I know he's really been really sad and depressed, and I really feel bad for him. He's from Scotland, and I hope I pray for him, and I hope he gets better. It's sad to lose a loved one. I know that. I'm sorry. Jennifer Blummer. Oh, thanks, Carl White. Oh, Michael Kane, there you are. I did see you earlier. So, guys, thanks so much for being here. If there's anybody I missed, put your name in there now. But don't forget, come back. And I'm going to set up, now don't forget, you can go to my main channel. And once I do once I create the event, the show for YouTube, all you have to do is click on it, and they'll send you a reminder in your emails. I don't send emails out anymore. I don't know what happened to them, but they weren't getting out. The Wix website that I have, they weren't going out. I don't know what the heck happened to them, so I stopped sending out emails. So just go to the event on my front page. I'll be setting it up, and all you have to do is click on it, and you'll get a reminder that we're live. Okay. Yeah, I know. Yeah, we love you too, Carl White. We love all our chat room. We got the best people in the chat room. We love you guys. Oh, so I'm gonna go, and everybody, yes, stay healthy, everybody. California is in the top now for the viruses, and it's really coming from Southern Cal. I'm in Northern California, and it's the Southern California that are having all the issues. Anyway, stay safe, everyone. Wear your mask, wash your hands, stay away from crowds. And I know one of the stores, Trader Joe's, one of the stores not too far from where we go shopping, 8 of their employees just came down with the virus. Evidently, one of them must have gotten it and then brought it into the store, and I'm sure they're going to be shutting that store down. So everybody, oh, Vipers Real TV, Vipers. So everybody, I'm going to go. Been binging on these fabulous series on Netflix and Prime, Amazon Prime. So now we're on Vikings. We had just finished The Last Kingdom. Unbelievable. So tonight we're going to continue on with the Vikings. I love it. So everybody, I'm going to go. Stay safe. Angela Lewis. Hi, honey. So I'm going to go. Everybody have a wonderful weekend. Don't forget, next Thursday we have another show, okay? So everybody, I will see you then. Have a great weekend. Stay safe and love you guys, okay? Night, everyone. Love you. Good night. Good night.